Imagine that you live in North Korea and you want to leave. What are your options? Well, if you look south, then you have South Korea just right there. That is probably your best option, right? Because you have the same language, you have the same people, and quite a lot of benefits as a North Korean citizen. But this is the last way that anyone leaves, because this is the DMZ, one of the most heavily armed places on earth, and almost nobody crosses the DMZ on foot and lives to tell the tale. So let's look at northeast to Russia. North Korea does border it, but very, very barely. I mean, the land border is about 17 kilometers long, and this is the shortest border Russia has with anyone. It's just crossed mostly by a single railway bridge, and you cannot walk over it and you cannot slip across it, so that leaves out Russia. But then this leaves us north, which is China. The Chinese border runs about 1,400 kilometers along two rivers, the Yalu in the west and the Tumen in the east. And you have rivers, not really fences or walls, and rivers can be crossed because in some places the river is shallow enough to wade, and sometimes it is narrow enough that you can just throw a stone across. In winter, it freezes, and that gives you the opportunity to just walk across. So realistically, the only option if you want to leave North Korea on foot is China. One door, that is all. Remember that, because this one door can be locked anytime. This video is the story of this one border, how important it was for the ordinary North Korean people, and how closing it has almost devastated the country. Before I go ahead, I want to emphasize this one thing here, that this border was not just always an escape route. It was a lifeline, because trader would go over to buy rice and cooking oil and Chinese goods and waited back to sell them. I mean, women would cross for a season of work and come home with the money. Some made the trip twice a year. The border was not as rigidly enforced as we have this idea. I mean, the journalist Barbara Demick mentions the story of a boy, Kim Hyuk. He was orphaned by the famine, and he kept himself alive by crossing into China to buy goods and carry them back to sell. He didn't really escape even when he was in China, which tells us that people valued their home, people valued their place, and they didn't always just want to leave. He made the trip again and again till eventually he was caught, and then he was sent to a labor camp. Only afterwards he eventually decided that he wanted to leave North Korea for good. I mean, the picture that we have in our heads is a wall with the whole country pressed up behind it and everybody just clamoring to get over. That isn't true, and it never really was. So who exactly did escape? I mean, it was the poor, and above all the poorest people of the northeast. I mean, roughly 3 out of every 4 people who got out came from the 2 provinces against the Chinese border, which is the North Hamgyong province and Ryanggyong. Between them, they hold about an eighth of the country, but they produce most of its escapees, and majority of them were women. Crossings ran on bribes. A border guard earned almost nothing. I mean, especially during the famine years, many weren't even being fed by the state. So you just paid them something to look away for a bit. But crossing the river was the step one. After that, there was a chain of guides, and each would run one leg and hand you over to the next. First, you would have a guide to the river, then you have a Chinese speaking guide on the far bank. And once you reach China, many people hid there for years. They were always living in fear of being sent back, because if you were caught, you would be repatriated to North Korea. Women especially suffered because they were undocumented without papers, and they were sold and trafficked and married off for money, which eventually became a very thriving industry in China, especially with North Korean women. So what would you do when you were in China? The next step would be 3,000 miles journey towards the China south. You would cross the border into Laos, cross the whole country, and then finally land into Thailand. Now, why exactly Thailand? Because Thailand is one country that won't repatriate you. It will treat you as an illegal immigrant. It will arrest you and detain you and hand you over, not to the North Korea, but to the South Korean authorities. So as soon as you enter Thailand, you walk up to the police, then you just turn yourself in. Now, South Korean constitution treats every North Korean as already a citizen, but there's a small catch, that you only get that citizenship if you reach South Korea yourself. You can't just walk into the Seoul embassy in Beijing and claim it, because they won't take you. And this catch is the entire reason for the 3,000-mile route. So once you are in Thailand, Seoul steps in and it handles the transfer and then flies you out. I mean, I'm simplifying it, but there are a lot of hurdles in even in this process. So when you land in Seoul, you are interrogated by the intelligence for up to 3 months to prove that you are actually a defector and not really a spy. And after that, you spend months in a resettlement center. Only after that, you start rebuilding your life from scratch. So what does that cost exactly? Now, a factory worker's wage is worth only a few dollars in a month. Let's call it $3 in North Korea, so around $30 to $40 a year. The journey we just talked about, the river and the years in China and then Laos, Thailand, it would run about $2,000 unless you paid upfront. If you couldn't pay upfront, it would double to $4,000. And you wanted to skip all that and you could afford money, no rivers, no jungle, no years in hiding and walking in fear, you could pay around 10,000 US dollars and you would get a forged Chinese passport. Then you would fly out of Beijing directly to Seoul, and just 3 weeks start to finish, you would be in South Korea. So how would the poorest people pay for that? Well, when you reach Seoul, South Korea hands you a resettlement grant. It depends on who you are, but it's a base of about $11,000, and which is a bit more if you are elderly or disabled or you are alone. But of course, the broker fee is paid first, and you collect the money meant to start your life, and most of it back to the brokers, which means that when you arrive, you are already in debt. But all of this, what I told you about this route, this price, the debt, and this whole journey was the old world, because then came 2020. And while the rest of the world shut down for a virus, North Korea used the pandemic to do something it had wanted to do for years: seal Chinese border completely. North Korea sealed the border in January 2020. It was among the first countries on earth to do it. In August, there was a buffer zone along the border with an order to shoot anyone who entered it. The North Korean special forces were posted with orders to shoot on sight. And then between 2020 and 2023, we see satellite images showing hundreds of kilometers of new fencing. You see guard posts being multiplied and double and triple lines of wires where there had been just one. There were also mines being laid along the river. It was reported, as I said, that the guards have orders to shoot anyone on sight. Crossing didn't get harder. I mean, they almost stopped. Around 90% of the brokers that were managing the traffic were gone. The bribes stopped working too. I mean, the state started to retrain and replace and even execute those soldiers who got caught in the act of getting bribed. But that begs the question exactly that the North Korean state could have done this at any time, so why wait all those decades and then seal it in 2020? And the answer lies in the fact of what the open border was doing for them. For 20 years, this leak, this border was feeding the country. I mean, the markets ran on goods that were crossed from China. The open border was the price of keeping people fed, because the state had long given up on feeding people since the famine in the 90s. But the problem was, by 2020, this border, this porous leak had become the threat, because it didn't just carry food, it started to carry information as well. South Korean dramas and music and films started to get smuggled in on the same route as the food. And for the DPRK, it became an existential threat. They had carefully crafted a narrative about the outside world, and this material, if it got popular, it would bring it all crashing down. But if you seal the border, you starve the people. If you leave it open, you lose control of the propaganda. But then COVID happened, and then it broke the deadlock. The pandemic gave the government the perfect reason that the world and its people would accept to do what it wanted to do for years. In December 2020, North Korea passed a new law. It set out punishments for South Korean films and recordings and books and songs and basically any media that is related to South Korea, and something even as simple as the South Korean speaking style. So what exactly happens to the people who want to escape now? I mean, in 2019, the year before the Great Seal, about 1,000 North Koreans reached the South. In 2021, the first full year after, it lowered to 63, and it hasn't really recovered. 196 in 2023, 236 in 2024, 223 last year. Country of 26 million people, and the number getting outfits in a few buses. But the numbers isn't the whole story. The more important story is who these people are. I mean, those people aren't the poor anymore from the river. Almost no one arrives straight from North Korea. The people coming out or reaching South Korea are the people who are already stranded in China. I mean, they've been hiding in China for years, sometimes a decade, and only now finishing the journey. And a few come from somewhere else entirely. Those are diplomats, those are students, those are workers the state sent abroad who just decided that they would want to defect to Russia and to China, and they just don't want to come home. In 2023, for example, the number of elite defectors was the highest in years. So the way out is inverted now. It used to be the poorest, and now it's the elite. And the price almost tells the same story. I mean, before the border was closed, the journey cost a couple of $1,000s. The plane, if if you wanted to go that route, would cost 10. Now the full route is quoted at around 70,000 US dollars. I mean, there is of course no official figure, but everyone who tracks these kind of numbers lands near the same figure. For 70,000 US dollars, you get a forged Chinese passport that you buy from the family of someone who died and was never reported, and then you fly as a normal Chinese tourist to South Korea directly and claim your asylum. But, and that is the key detail, you still cannot cross the river. This route is available to people who are in China already, and if you are in North Korea, well, there isn't much that you can do. Now, lately you see a very different North Korea in the media. You see glossy photos out of Pyongyang. You see new towers and residential areas being built. You see traffic jams on the roads where even seeing cars was unthinkable at one time. A Wall Street Journal article calls North Korea the world's most surprising economic success story. But if you step outside of Pyongyang into the countryside, you will find the other side of everything that we have talked about. The borders got closed, trade that fed these provinces stopped, and the prices climbed. A human rights report found that North Korea, the whole country except the capital, sits in what's classified as phase emergency, which is a level just below famine. What does that look like? I mean, in one county, families that can afford regular meals are now considered affluent. In another town, people would eat food that was saved from New Year, eating it after it had spoiled because there was nothing else. On a festival day in Hyesan, a source estimated 6 in 10 families didn't have enough to eat. Food security has been at its worst since the famine of the 90s, in which nearly 3 million people perished. And the last thing that they had as a poor person in North Korea was the hope of escaping. Even that is now taken from them. Escape is a luxury that only the elite can afford, just like everything else in North Korea. North Korea is a black box, but people still work there. And I made a whole video about what is it exactly like working in North Korea, the hermit state. If you want to watch that, then you can have a look here. And if you like this video, please let me know down in the comments what you liked and what you would like to see more. I'll see you in the next one.